I've got a job coming up soon for the shaper where this table is going to have to move right over here. And the question is, when does the nut, which is about there, looking from above, run off the end of this thread here? Now these threads only extend to this point, which is a great safety measure, because get the table too far over, the nut just drops off the thread onto this plain part and we don't get anything broken. But when it does come off, it's darned annoying. I've never run the table off that thread this way, but I have over here run it off many times. And I know roughly when the edge of this table gets to just there, it runs off the nut. Now getting the table or this screw back into this nut is quite difficult. And I found that I can't do it simply by applying a pressure to this table and winding. It just doesn't work very well. So what I need to do in that case is take these two nuts off here and then slide this lead screw, if you like, over this way into the table, push it back as a unit and put the nuts back on. I've wasted a lot of time trying to do it by simply pushing the table into the thread. It just doesn't work. Now then, so I know where the table runs off the thread if I go this way. I don't know where it runs off this way. So I've done a little bit of measurement. I'll just show you a diagram. Give me a second. I started off taking measurements with the intention of doing a scale drawing, but I soon realised I didn't need to do that. All I need to know is the width of the table, which is 175, the width of the nut, which is 45, its relative position to the edge here, and this edge here as well. And then I can measure from there to there, add on perhaps 35, measure that from here, and that will tell me how far the table can move along relative to this edge here before I get to a 10mm guard margin before the nut would run off this thread. And I can do the same at the other side. So what I'm going to do, in fact, is I'm going to make a kind of guide that sits behind the table here, and so that without having to think about it, I can see when the table is getting close to coming off the thread at either side. From experience, I know that when that edge of the table there lines up with the end of this way, it runs off the nut. So my marker wants to be about 10mm in from the end of that way there at this side. Now I don't know about the other side over here because I've never run off that way. So we'll need to do that by measurement. If I measure from this edge of the nut here to the edge of the table, I know from experience that it's 105. And then to the edge of the thread here is 190 from the edge of the nut. Add on 35, that's 225. If I measure 225 from the edge of this table here, it tells me that the table can come right out to here. So the guide that I make will have a marker on it there. We've got two screws here securing this swarf guard, and we can use those to secure the guide. Now, what do we make the guide from? Obviously it needs to be something glamorous and sophisticated, or we could use this piece of aluminium angle from an old greenhouse. I don't think we need to overthink this. It might get bent there on the left by sticking out. Well, if it does, I'll just straighten it. It'll be good enough. So let's get this plate off, and that can be my template for drilling the holes. Try not to lose them. I'm trying to kick off a cold at the moment. Seems to be going on for ages. Right. If I line up that edge with that edge, approximately, slip this on here. and I can just spot through them with a Sharpie. That should do it. I'll check it before I drill it. I've drilled the 2 holes then to hold this guide to this carriage, but before I fix it on I need to put the markers on. Now I've put a pen mark there, it's the outer one, and a pen mark over here. Now I could just put a couple of saw cuts in, but I want to make something a little bit nicer than that, so I'm going to use these 2 screws with the lock nuts underneath, and I think that'll just look a little bit nicer. I may modify this later, but we'll just see how we get on with it. I've countersunk these a little bit. I think we'd be better off with button head screws. Oh, that might be a change I make later. Come on. Well, does it work? I know it'll work at this end. Let's see what happens at this end. That's pretty rigid really, it's good enough. If this table does run off the thread, there might be a few words I need to edit out of the video. But with confidence, yep, that's it. And I'll make sure I can wind it back on, which I can. Knowing that I can move that table so far to the left with absolute confidence is great. I've been meaning to do this job for months, but also it just highlights, you know, just how versatile that shaper is. I hope you found that useful.